Today on episode 117 of Rail Talk, it's our year-end extravaganza show. Jon tells us about the feasibility study to sustain racing long-term in Florida, something we all care about, the latest takeaways from the racing symposium and the CAW discussion, bunch of cold weather cancellations and people complaining about that. Never a slow week here in racing. I'm Joe Bianca. I'm an ownership advisor at West Point Thoroughbreds, and I just got to give a shout out to my man, Nathan Wilkinson, our associate producer, who jumped on last minute with us. We're recording this Monday night to fit it in our schedules, and Nathan, at the drop of a hat, came on with us and is going to babysit all of our hijinks. Shout out to Nathan.
It's always good to shout out our producers and behind the scenes people that prop us up and make us look good, because otherwise they very easily could make us look bad, Joe. Jonathan Green, general manager of DJ Stable. Joe, it is the final show of 2025. And I would like to know what grievances you have. We'll go Seinfeld style for the last segment of the show.
I don't know. We want to get done before midnight, Jon. I don't know if that's a great idea, but it's been a great year. And yeah, we're just, it's Rail Talk After Dark, by the way. We're recording this after hours, so things go off the rails. That's what Off the Rails is for. The opinions expressed on Rail Talk are those of hosts Joe Bianca and Jon Green and do not reflect those of anybody we work with or work for. Rail Talk is sponsored by Facing Tipton. Phenomenal year for Facing Tipton. We really appreciate their partnership on the show, and we appreciate what they do in the industry and providing all of these opportunities for horses to change hands, for business to churn. We saw obviously the record-breaking sales in the brick and mortar sales from the November sale to the Saratoga sale and everything in between. We're looking forward to next year's Mid-Atlantic May sale with the Gallop only, really, breaking new ground on that, and we appreciate that. But the one thing we've talked about and we've harped on a lot this year, and it's for good reason, is the digital sale. They wrapped up their last digital sale of the year last week, December 9th and 10th. Treadstone was the topper. He's a debut-winning son of Tappet, sold for $470,000 to Greg Compton, who's a trainer. Gainesway consigned is a 2-year-old, broke his maiden on November 23rd at Aqueduct. Very, very impressively. A lot of other good prices there. $350,000 for Tour Player, $280,000 for Empress Eleanor, a lot of six-figure horses. And Jon, that led to just an astonishing number for the year for the digital sales.
Yeah, overall, this December sale, Joe, there were 421 horses that changed hands, $10.6 million of purchases at this digital sale, which was believed to be the highest grossing ever for an online auction worldwide in the history of thoroughbred racing. And 22 different horses sold for $100,000 or more just at the sale, just in the December digital sale. So, you talk about the leaders in the field for different parts of our industry, and Fasig Tipton arguably is the number one digital sale platform in the industry, along with all the other things that they do so well. So congratulations to Leif Aaron, the Fasig Tipton director of digital sales, of course, to Boyd Browning on the sites and the rest of the team at Fasig Tipton. What a way to finish a phenomenal year.
Absolutely. And they've sold over 1,600 horses this year through the digital sales and grossed over 50 million. So, and just the fact that this was like the highest grossing digital sale of the year tells you that people are starting to get the picture. Those who have been left behind are no longer left behind, and they're getting involved, which leads me to the January digital sale, which is January 15th through the 20th. That's the next opportunity to get involved. Entries close January 5th. So you got a couple weeks to get those horses in, start browsing the catalog. So yeah, shout out to everybody at Facing Tipton. $10 million for a digital sale. The future is now. So big news this week from the side of Thoroughbred Racing Initiative, the group that obviously Jon is part of with Damon Thayer and Mark Cassie and Doc Eisenman and a bunch of these folks and a bunch of great donors, by the way. I want to shout out all the donors who have put money into this. It's a great unified effort that we're very proud of in this industry. And, it's something that we need more of, this kind of cooperation. They had put together a study of feasibility for different racetracks to host racing long-term in Florida, because obviously it's a perilous situation right now with Gulfstream Park and Belinda Stronach and the Stronach Group not super interested in keeping racing there long term. So the question is, what do we do? Do we stay at Gulfstream? Do we find other alternatives? And I'm going to let Jon talk for the most part, but this is like the key part to lead into it from the study. It says the kind of the parameters for finding a long-term home for Florida racing. It says the study calls for sites to have at a minimum a 1 mile dirt track, 7 furlong turf course with movable rail, a a 3,000 capacity grandstand and apron, large infield board, receiving and test barns, veterinary and claiming facilities, about 1,400 stalls, and necessary backstretch support and parking. They looked into Gulfstream, Palm Meadows, Hialeah, Tampa Bay Downs, other possibilities. So, Jon, take it away. It's a 178-page study, you said, but a helpful press release to sum it all up. Take us through it and kind of what the major findings were.
Yeah, and Joe, thank you for the intro. Thoroughbred Racing Initiative, like you mentioned, is made up of a number of horsemen, trainers, owners, breeders, veterinarians, farm owners, et cetera. And basically, it was invented for two major reasons. One was to stop decoupling, which was the immediate goal, and the second, which we did, thankfully, with everyone's help and efforts. And then the second prong of our two-prong mission here was to find alternatives if Gulfstream decided to ultimately lock the doors, turn off the lights and unplug everything, and leave us homeless as far as racing in Florida. So it was a yeoman's amount of work to do. Thankfully, we were able to kind of hitch our wagon to the Crossroads Consulting Services, which had done a similar feasibility study in Maryland a few years ago with regard to the Preakness and providing other options. So they had already done a tremendous amount of grunt work on the statistical analysis of the industry. And, again, we use feasibility a lot, but the feasibility of whether or not racing should be continued in various regions of the country. And they put together this, like you said, almost 180-page summary. And I won't go into all of it with you. But basically, Joe, it came down to that we had made a promise. We at Thoroughbred Racing Initiative and the industry as a whole had made a promise to the politicians in Tallahassee that by the time we came back into session the following year, which is in a couple of weeks now, in January of 2026, that we would show how serious we were by having alternative options. Because basically, they're politicians. They have a lot of things going on, and they can't know our industry as intimately as we do. So they basically came to us and said, look, we want to have some kind of study done and some kind of alternative options for us. So that way, if you guys can't get in a room together and hash it out, then at least we know that Florida racing will continue to go on. Because, Joe, it is a $3 billion industry annually on the economy of Florida, $3 billion with a B, which is stated in a number of different studies, not just ours. So we think of ourselves as kind of like this boutique little industry, but for the state of Florida, $3 billion go in and out of the state because of the horse industry. So let's get to it. Basically, Joe, there were half a dozen or so different options. They ranged from trying to work something out with Gulfstream Park, trying to make Palm Meadows into a full-time race facility, not just a training facility. Call the Race Course was reviewed and looked to see whether or not that could be revitalized and brought back into into better shape so it could be racing again. Hialeah Park, whether it was an actual, hey, we got to come in and build some barns and renovate the racetrack and the turf course, all the way to, maybe we just make this a ship-in meet, like Kentucky Downs or Colonial Downs for that matter, where there's horses that are coming in and out of that racetrack all the time, to Tampa Bay Downs. And then finally, Joe, there was something called a quote-unquote greenfield concept, which wasn't named after me. It was basically that they went in and said, if we find land in Florida and we're able to build a racetrack under the parameters that you mentioned before, 8-furlong dirt track and at least a 7-furlong turf course, which is identical to Tampa Bay Downs, by the way, in circumference, and have a 3,000-seat grandstand, about 1,400 stalls and other racing operation facilities, put together, how much that would cost, not including land. So basically, we would know going into it, it's going to cost X amount of dollars. And Joe, the summary put out all of those different half a dozen or so options. They range in price from $30 million all the way up to $200 million, depending on which option you want to go with. But the important takeaway for me from this study is that it looks like we can reasonably have racing in Florida. It's just going to take a certain amount of give and take, from some of these facility owners, and or a landowner in Florida who is willing to have parimutuel wagering for at least 6 months out of the year. That was the summary of basically 180 pages. I know there's a lot more into it, and we'll get more details out as we're allowed to. But basically, that's kind of the skinny of the entire report.
All right. So, like, what's your take on it? Like, I mean, you've analyzed all these possible alternatives. Obviously, the most feasible would be, just in terms of structure, would be Gulfstream, but you have to work in the cost of getting Belinda and the company to sell the racetrack, which seems unlikely at this point. Although maybe Mike Rapoli said he's interested in buying it, and there's certain people like. What do you think is the path of least resistance going forward from what you've seen?
I think of the 6 different options, Joe, there's, in my estimation, this is just me talking, I think there's 3 very viable options. And one of them obviously is to try to work something out with Gulfstream. And people would say, wow, if that's the best of our options, we're screwed. But it's really not, because there's a lot of things that are going on with regard to, the casino licenses and how much money they're making and things like that. So that is an option on the table. Joe, I honestly think that Hialeah, one of the 2 Hialeah options could be very feasible, because, right now the racetracks aren't in bad shape. They haven't been raced on in years, and they're going to need $15 to $20 million to get them up to snuff. But for the most part, the facility itself, meaning the grandstand and obviously the casino, is in very good shape. They got rid of all of the barns because they were old and starting to fall down, and they were an insurance nuisance, quite frankly, and a risk. But again, depending on what kind of barns you want to have built, if you want to just have temporary tents like they did at Gulfstream, like they do at Kentucky Downs and other racetracks, those are a lot less expensive and temporary. So you can move them in and out. So I think that's an option. Again, it's just a question of, is the Brunetti family interested in leasing the racetrack to us and allow us to go ahead and have parimutuel wagering and racing there, which would bring more people in, for their casino? Or do they just want to, or are they willing to have like a ship-in option where they say, you can't build anything. You can have these temporary, barns up, or you can build things, but then it's like, okay, Joe, would you build something on a facility that you don't own the land of? So there's some additional questions. It's not quite, none of these options are A to B. None of them are straightforward. Tampa Bay obviously is a great option. But my understanding is that the current owners of Tampa Bay Downs are really happy with the way things are going there and don't really want to change. And I know the owner, Stella, is in her 80s and doesn't really have a direct descendant that wants to take over the racetrack. So, that might change depending on, God forbid, something happens to her, or I don't want it to sound like the Brooklyn, New York, hey, you got a nice racetrack here. It's a shame if something happened to it type thing. I know that's your line. That's not my line. But anyway, I did it almost like Rodney Dangerfield on that. Hey, Tampa Bay gets no respect. Anyway, I digress. So I think that's an option because they have a fully functioning racetrack and they have all the licenses in place and they have all the approvals from not only state, but also from Seminole Nation as well. So I think there's a lot of options. And the Greenfield option is the most intriguing to me because it would basically be horsemen building a racetrack, almost like a Field of Dreams, where if you build it, they will come, and you can make it exactly the way you want. But in doing so, it's gonna be like according to the study, it's gonna be like a 6 to 8 year window that we're gonna have to wait until that last option, the Greenfield option, is actually functional. So there's no solid gold stamp, great option. Let's start tomorrow and we can be racing there in 2026 or 2027. But I think there are some options out there, and the feasibility study showed us what we definitely can't do, which is part of the battle, and what we can do as an industry and as a horseman's group.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. You should read through the press release for sure. It's a kind of a good primer for where we go from here. The one that isn't mentioned, and maybe this is a possibility for the so-called greenfield option, is Ocala. And I saw something from the Global Symposium last week. The FTBOA chief executive, Lonnie Powell, went up there and talked about planning to build a racetrack in Ocala using a nonprofit racing license issued by the state more than a decade ago. Says this is kind of been a permit that's been issued for a while, but has been on ice and undeveloped. I like Ocala for several reasons. One, you want to talk about a place that's growing and that is horse centric. And I always tell people this when people ask me like what my favorite racetracks are, I always tell them Saratoga and Keeneland. And it's not necessarily that they have the best facilities, although they are really nice. It's that those are the only two places left in America where everything centers around the horse. Yeah. You go downtown, you see people reading the racing form. Yep. You hear people talking about the races for that day. It is the center of everything in those towns. Obviously in Lexington, and then of course in Saratoga, that's a big deal. And I think that's finding a place like that is kind of how you avoid being brushed off to the side and being like a sideshow or a minimal attraction.
Right.
Dude, Ocala, every single year that I go there, there's more and more development. And I think a big part of it has to do with the World Equestrian Center, which is an incredibly impressive facility with all sorts of horse shows and arenas and a hotel and a restaurant. It's gigantic. If you've never been there before, it's built by one of the most wealthy families in Florida. They keep expanding it every single year. And that's a big reason why Ocala has developed the way it is. To say nothing of the sales that are down there every year, every March, April, June, whenever the winter sale is. This is another place where everything is about the horse. They call it the horse capital of the world. Right. I don't think Lexington is very fond of that. And if they were ever to battle in court about it, I think that wouldn't be surprising. But I wonder about Ocala. There was a racetrack there at one point. They only used it like a couple of days out of the year for like the OBS sales championships. That's an interesting option to me. Now, I know that there's not necessarily 100% crossover between the show horse world and the thoroughbred world. Sometimes they don't get along. They're not into the same things. But having that kind of interest in horses, they're built in with a growing population, growing infrastructure. Jon, what are your thoughts on Ocala as a potential future landing spot for Florida racing?
Yeah, I think a lot of people in the industry would love to have a functional racetrack, especially in the wintertime, in the Ocala area. I think you hit on something, Joe, as far as the Roberts family and WEC and all the building and developing that's going on there. The land is just too valuable there now. I mean, it's almost like the same situation that we're running into at Gulfstream, where the land value is too much to have a racetrack. Now, that being said, there are certainly rural areas north and west of Ocala, where, if it's a half an hour van ride to get your horses there, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. One of the pieces of information in the feasibility study actually talks about vacancies, stall vacancies, unoccupied stalls in and around the Ocala area. And it lends itself to where, you would be able to have horses stabled and training at these training facilities, and ship, half an hour, 45 minutes north or west of Ocala, maybe even closer to Gainesville, a major airport there, in order to be able to have people fly in and go to the races, or fly privately and go to the races, whatever they want to do. But there certainly is an option for the Ocala area. It is not, the Florida breeders down there have a license that hasn't been utilized, and OBS was actually instrumental in allowing them and backing them 10 or 15 years ago. I don't remember the exact date, in order to get that done. And that's not the only option. As far as to whom could actually, start it and run it and manage it. But my understanding is that they're starting to get some investors together and looking to see about how probable it could be to buy land somewhere in like a 50-mile radius of the Ocala area and have it run there. And, Joe, quite frankly, for all the reasons you mentioned, it makes a lot of sense to do it. But again, I think you're looking at like that year plus or minus window from the time that you get everything approved until the time shovel hits the dirt, and then you actually get horses into the starting gate for the first time.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's true. I mean, obviously dealing with existing facilities is an easier route on that note.
Yep.
To me, the crux of the issue, and I'm looking at it from the outside for the most part, is you got to have someone in charge of the track whose first priority is racing. Mm-hmm. And that's like that to me is the grand issue around all these racetracks that have closed or that are potentially closed. You have people running them that are not interested in racing. And listen, to a certain extent, I get it. Like, it's a very expensive place to run a racetrack with lots of overhead. Mm-hmm. And you got to have someone who's passionate about the industry, who's in charge of it, because you might take some losses. You might take a lot of losses in some years. Yep. And I think that's it's frustrating when I see companies like Churchill Downs closing tracks, mm-hmm. because I get, like, Belinda doesn't really have that much connection to racing. Like, her dad was super into it, but she's more of like a cold-hearted businesswoman, and like does wants something that's going to be good for the bottom line. She doesn't really care what it is. Churchill Downs built their fortune on racing. Churchill Downs became a corporation because of the success of Kentucky Derby and the racing product. So it really bugs me when they will immediately turn their back on racetracks like Arlington Park and Calder, and then potentially Fairgrounds down the road. So we got to have people in charge who are most interested in racing and the product. And that's where guys like Mike Rapoli and other, billionaires and super rich people got to put their money where their mouth is, because you can't just talk about saving the game. Here's a prime opportunity. I know it's not my money. It's easy to spend other people's money, but here's a prime opportunity for you to put something behind all that talk about saving the game and actually doing something to save it. And that's the most important thing for me. Jon, one more question for you. You mentioned last year when, Governor DeSantis and the Florida legislature kind of gave us a reprieve on, the decoupling thing. But you also said that, the deal was that you had to come back with some ideas. What's the next step in this process? Now that we have this study and it's out there for the industry to analyze, for the Florida legislators to analyze, what's the next step in 2026?
Well, I think the most important thing is that no successful project like this, of this size, begins without a study. And basically, so that way the industry understands what can and can't be done. And as much as I would love to say, hey, here it is, here's the golden ticket, all you got to do is, is do this one thing and everything will come out all right. There's multiple options, which is, I guess, good that there's multiple options. But the next thing that has to be done is we have a fight coming up in Tallahassee again. To try to beat decoupling. And again, it's going to take everybody to do it. Success has many fathers and failure is an orphan, the old adage. And there were a lot of groups and individuals that rallied behind and with us. And we're going to need those efforts again to put decoupling to bed for the second time in 2 years, for the sixth time in 10 years. This has come up time and time again. But the key is to get this out of Tallahassee and, again, give us a reprieve so that way we can look at the options, kind of vet them all out, no pun intended, and then see what makes the most sense and see, again, who wants to financially back it, because this isn't going to be charity. I mean, this is going to be something that it's a lot of money, potentially, and it's going to be a real business. And like you mentioned, we're going to need to have real business people who have deep pockets and a long-term goal of keeping the industry together, in mind. But the main thing is to continue to support the groups that are fighting decoupling, because if it happens in Florida, it's going to happen everywhere else once there's a precedent. And quite frankly, Joe, one thing that the feasibility study doesn't say, but that we've said collectively and individually within our organization, is that if decoupling happens in Florida, then the industry has got a shelf life.
Real Talk is sponsored by Epic Insurance Brokers, one of the nation's top retail insurance brokers, providing expertise across key lines of insurance like property and casualty, employee benefits, and unique specialty insurance. Our buddy Chris Moore leads Epic's equine specialty practice. You see him all over the place: sales, races, backstretch, Twitter. He's got horses himself. This is his passion. And foaling season is right around the corner, and all ages sales are happening all around us. Chris even had a couple extra to his broodmare band from the Facing December sale. Shout out to Chris for expanding his footprint in the industry. One of the mares Chris purchased was in foal. First thing he did, purchase prospective foal insurance. A lot of insurance companies will require you to insure the mare to purchase prospective foal insurance, and they'll only allow you to allocate 50% of the purchase price toward that prospective foal. That's not what Chris did. Chris insured his prospective foal for 100% of the purchase price because that was the best thing for his investment thesis. And he was able to do it because he knows the markets that will allow you to customize your insurance program to meet your needs. Give Chris a call or shoot him a text to begin the conversation. His cell number is 317-650-4519. You won't regret it. And that leads us to this week's
Epic Performance of the Week.
And this week's epic performance of the week is a horse that I'm surprised we haven't done up until now. And, we shouted out Rebel Romance as one of the coolest older horses in training. This is the only horse that I think might supersede him and his resume at that upper age bracket. And that's Romantic Warrior, who won an unprecedented fourth consecutive Hong Kong Cup over the weekend. He's now got 11 different Group 1 wins in 4 different jurisdictions. We saw him run gigantic in the Dubai World Cup, just got run down by Forever Young, and could argue he was best in that race, made a real early move. He's just short of his 8th birthday, and he's still kicking ass and taking names, and just obviously a great procession for him in front of that huge crowd at the Hong Kong International races. He just was much the best. Super cool. And I just love, shout out to trainer Danny Schum, who's has kept this horse together through 4 or 5 different seasons. And we love all these old war horses, even when it's just, claiming horses or allowance horses that are still, running it up at 6, 7, 8 years old. But for Romantic Warrior to be this good, this late in his career, ship around as much as he does. He had a surgery earlier this year in May as well, and overcame that to win this big race. 4 straight Hong Kong Cup wins. Just a complete rock star of a racehorse, and the kind of horse that we'll be talking about, I think, for years and maybe even decades to come, because he's a star and he's an anachronism like Rebel's Romance, horses that stick around into their 6th, 7th, 8-year-old years and are still doing as well as ever, and just love their job, love to train, and he's ageless. And we really just wanted to spotlight him for this day. I know we don't cover a ton of international racing on this show, but this is one horse that breaks through and is just a superstar on a global scale. Shout out to Romantic Warrior and the Connections for the 4th straight Hong Kong Cup win. This week's epic performance of the week. Rail Talk is sponsored by the Green Group, the #1 accounting firm in the horse business. No other CPA firm knows the horse industry like they do. Len and DJ Stable have over 200 horses, presumptive champion in nitrogen. They've won over 2,600 races. The Green Group has close to 1,000 clients in the horse business because they make them money and save them taxes. As always, there is an exclusive offer for you. Yes, you, listener and viewer of Rail Talk. You can call Len or go to the website at greenco.com for a complimentary, confidential half-hour consultation where Len guarantees, like the Men's Warehouse guy, that you will get value. So many people in our orbit have already taken advantage of that offer. Don't be a sucker. Get involved right now, because obviously those tax returns are going to pile up. Len's going to get really, really busy when it gets into February and March. You want to reach out to them right now at, what's that number, Michael Agresta?
73263450100. Green Group.
That was a little too close to the Trump dance for my comfort, but obviously, you only get so many ideas for dances doing this week after week. But shout out to Michael Agresta, shout out to the Green Group. We appreciate you guys and your support and your partnership all year. It was great to see Len for the 100th episode. Obviously, could not do this without you guys. So call them up at that number, but you don't have to take it from me. Plenty of satisfied customers to give those testimonials to you and how they've helped them out in their horse business. This week, oh God, Lauren Carlisle is our testimonial for this week. Shout out to Lauren, I guess. Black Dog Bloodstock, in all seriousness, she does a great job, and it's a great partnership between her and Len. Let Lauren tell you all about how the Green Group has helped her.
My name is Lauren Carlisle.
I have a bloodstock company and I help DJ Stable pick out horses at the sales, 2-year-olds and yearlings. Meeting Lynn and getting to know him the last 2 years has been one of the greatest things that's happened to me in the last 2 years. Efficiency, knowledge, everyone I've worked with at the firm, Carlene, Jack, Donna, everybody has been very professional, very knowledgeable, makes me feel very comfortable. You know, I don't ask stupid questions. They don't make me feel like I ask stupid questions about my taxes. And you can tell that they care and they're very thorough with the way that they do their work. So I appreciate that. Since they understand the horse business, I can tell them, you know, parts that I'm involved with and not really have to explain what that is in detail because they already know most of everything about it. And so they know the avenues on the tax side and how to save money, and you know, maybe I have a write-off I'm not aware of, and very easy to do that with them since they're very knowledgeable. I would absolutely recommend the Green Group 100%. I love everybody that works there that I've worked with, so absolutely.
Thank you, Lauren. Can't wait for you to bust my chops about all manner of things in 2026 and drink me under the table as well. But Lauren does an unbelievable job. You know, it's just her. It's just her at Black Dog Bloodstock, but she picks out all sorts of great horses. Ewing was one of her selections, as well as David and Gordo. They kind of worked together for West Point and DJ to purchase that horse, and we're looking forward to big things from him in 2026. She does an excellent job, and so does the Green Group. They do a terrific job. There's nobody else you want in charge of your taxes than someone and the team that lives this industry, lives and breathes this industry, has seen it for decades on decades, and just really knows the ins and outs of the business. Call Len at 732-634-5100 or go to greenco.com. Do it soon. Get a jump on those 2025 taxes and talk to our boy Len. All right, so we touched on this last week. We had the big CAW discussion coming out of like the embarrassing part of the track official basically not wanting to answer questions about the CAW bettors. There was more transparency in the ensuing days, I got to say. And Pat Cummings, of course, did a great job moderating one of those discussions, which I hear was like the most well-attended panel of any at the symposium, which makes a lot of sense. So the news that came out of the following days was that David O'Rourke, was the CEO of NYRA, was on one of these panels and said beginning in January, they'll restrict CAW bettors with 1 minute to post. They'll be throttled, quote unquote, to the same 6 bets per second limit as standard ADW users. I'm quoting from Ed DeRosa's tweet here. It says, David O'Rourke adds that racing has to improve how often odds update. We have to improve our cycle time. That's for damn sure. And I think the technological fix could go a long way towards making people feel more confident in betting into the pools, that you don't have these odds shift after the gates open, because that's just completely unacceptable. Even if it's not past posting, just from an optics standpoint, is totally unacceptable. You know, I kind of feel two ways about this. I got to give credit to NYRA for kind of being on the forefront of this, because up until this year, no one has done anything to restrict the CAW bettors in any way. NYRA did it 5 years ago, and you really don't see the late odds drops in the win pools that you used to. Marshall Graham had a study about it that I don't know the exact numbers, but basically like the favorite changes in the last flash, usually like 1 in every 5 or 6 races. And in NYRA, it's like 1 in every 25 races or something. Wow. So it's done a lot to make sure that the odds don't swing as wildly going to in the last flash before they open the gates. So I do want to give credit to NYRA for actually doing something about this. That being said, like, it's a half measure, I think, just like anything in this game that doesn't want to completely chase the CAWs away, in that they're still going to have 3 minutes, because the NYRA always runs, basically the gates break 2 minutes after the scheduled post time. So if you stop the CAWs from putting in the huge batch bets with 1 minute to post, that's still 3 minutes where they can put in 6 bets per second. Doing the math real quick, that's 1,080 possible seconds where they can bet, or 1,080 bets that they can make in those 3 minutes at 6 bets per second. And they can still move the odds plenty with that. Like, yes, you won't see that final last flash where the odds change so much, but that's still major influence that they can have in the pools. Again, like I feel multiple ways. Like I'm happy that NYRA is actually, going out there and doing something, even if people think it's not enough. Where is everybody else on this? Where's Keeneland? Where's Del Mar had to do it basically like at gunpoint from the bettors who were so pissed off all summer. They basically had to do something about it. Otherwise, people were really going to start getting pissed off and talk about boycotts and all that. But Jon, like they still have so much influence over the pools that it's throwing us a bone, which is better than nothing. But this is like, I don't know. And the thing is, like, I don't know the logistics of it. Like, I honestly don't know if they can cut off certain ADWs, period. If there's some kind of bylaws or something, or some kind of arrangement or some kind of agreement where they're not allowed to do that. But, obviously it would go a longer way. And I think it would get a lot more people on board if you just said, hey, Elite Turf Club, you guys are done with 1 to 2 minutes to post. Done, period. No more bets. But again, they don't want to do that because they're afraid of chasing away a larger and larger piece of the handle pie, Jon.
Right. Well, and again, kudos to NYRA for at least, the willingness to make some changes. And I think David O'Rourke even said in the conference, optically, this looks terrible, which is why we're implementing this rule. Now, again, should it be 2 minutes? Should it be 5 minutes? Should it be, I don't know. I mean, greater minds than mine have studied it and have looked at everything like that. Joe, to me, it still comes back to, if you're not going to change what these great big, wagering groups can do, then why haven't we been able to adopt the fixed odds model?
Right.
Because again, that keeps coming back to like, that's the magic bullet. That's the thing that can help and that can save it. And I know Monmouth tried it, and they just didn't get enough of a groundswell amount of people who were willing to bet into the fixed odds. But, they at least tried. And the idea was there. But you would think that would be, reasonably, that would be something that would be, that all parties could kind of buy into and adopt at this point. But like you said, I don't know what the rules and the regulations are. I'm not going to pretend to know what it is. But you're much more of a handicapper than I am. Would that give you as a individual bettor, would that give you confidence then if you were betting into fixed odds?
Yeah, I mean, that's the answer. That is the only foolproof answer to any of this. But like you said, Monmouth has tried it. No other major racetrack has tried it. And you read the tea leaves, there's got to be a reason that they show no interest in doing that. And I know for a fact that some of these betting companies, like especially the international betting companies, are trying. They're lobbying to get fixed odds into more tracks so they can run it, across the country. But there's got to be a reason that nobody seems interested in doing it other than Monmouth Park. And I got to think that the reason is they're getting so much handle from the CAW players that they can't afford to have that kind of alternative. They need the minnows in the pools for the CAW sharks. I mean, I think that's what it comes down to, is that if you have a separate pool with liquidity just for the regular bettor, then the CAWs, it's much less attractive for them to spit out those algorithms and take advantage of the people who don't get the last look at the odds and are not able to put that much money through the windows late in the wagering. So yeah, I mean, fixed odds would change everything. And there are people trying to implement it in America, and it just has gotten absolutely no traction other than at Monmouth Park. And yeah, and especially, like I've said this before, but when you're competing against sports betting, it's just that is the standard. You know what I mean? And the sports books are all assholes too. But at least at FanDuel, like when I go to punch in a bet, if the odds change, there's a little thing that pops up and says, hey, the odds change. Do you still want to make this bet? Can you imagine race racing doing that? Like with 30 seconds to pose, say, hey, the CAWs are going to make this bet way, way less attractive. You sure you want to place it? Like it's just, you couldn't possibly fathom a world where they do that. And, I'm not into the conspiracy theories, but just the fact that so many people are half stepping. And again, I give NYRA credit. At least they're trying to do something. Nobody else really is following their lead, unfortunately. I hope they do in 2026. But even in the best case scenario, it's a bunch of half stepping and half measures because they are so beholden to that chunk of handle from the CAW bettors. And those guys are sharp. Like they have gotten, and I always say this, we talk about this discussion because as if they're like these shadowy, nefarious groups. And I do think they have an insidious effect on this game and they're chasing people away, but they're obviously very sharp bettors. Like they've put together algorithms that can beat a very, very hard game to beat, even with the rebates. Like they still do well and are better than the average player. But there's nothing to say that they can't go to another game and come up with a similar system to win at sports betting or some kind of casino wagering or whatever. So it's not as if these are people that are beholden to betting on horse racing. Like if you push enough, probably some of them are going to go away, and that's the position. That's the corner that we've painted ourselves in racing, where we need this handle, but we also need the regular bettors in the pools. And I'm very, very curious to see what the handle numbers are in 2026, because this thing has really come to a head. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are fed up to the point where there are so few places of security that horse players have in this country. And it's lowering takeout would certainly help. That reduces the edge that the CAW bettors have. Lowering takeout, it's usually a thing that needs approval from the state or from the gaming commission or whatever board is in charge. It's something that needs to be done. And that's another thing that could keep people playing the sport. And that's something that doesn't seem to be on the table for a lot of racetracks. And there's just, takeout's too high. The odds change left and right. Horses get scratched all the time. Cards get canceled all the time. Jockeys walk out. There's just so much nonsense and so many hurdles and mines you have to avoid in order to bet on the sport that we love so much. And it's just like, how do you expect people to keep coming back to this? And, I hope that there, at least NYRA is out there trying to plant the flag, trying to do something. Where is everybody else on this? Like, that's the part that really drives me crazy. And again, like I said it last week, but the idea that the everyday bettor, like the small to medium handle bettor is the core customer, doesn't seem to be borne out by reality anymore. Like the racetracks and the people in charge of the officials treat this as if the CAWs are the core customer. And this is, I worry that this is the best we're going to get, is like this, this throttling down by NYRA. Maybe one or two tracks follow their lead. I think a lot of people in charge of a lot of tracks, John, are kind of just like, la, 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 la. Like, I hope this goes away. Stick your fingers in your ears, stick your head in the sand. Hope people don't talk about this anymore the way they did in 2025. But I think if they aren't talking about it next year, it's because they quit. Real Talk is sponsored by TaylorMade. Shout out to the team at TaylorMade for a phenomenal year. We really appreciate the partnership with TaylorMade and this show. I mean, it's just they exude excellence in everything they do, from the sales ring to the stallion barn to the boarding to the partnerships. Plenty of new ground broken on the partnership side, and obviously in the sale, they're just pretty much every yearling sale, they're the top consigner. It's their specialty, but that's not all they do. They do digital sales, they do horses of racing age, they do a little bit of everything. John and DJ Stable obviously use them for a reason. So definitely, hit them up for next year's matings. If you have yearlings that you're starting to prep, they'll go to your farm early and figure out which ones are, as John would say, breathe different air and, need to go to the Facing Saratoga sale, or the, Book One of Keelan, or if there's like a lesser quote unquote sale, that they could shine in, they will help you make those decisions. They're the best scouters of talent in this business, pound for pound. And, obviously that it goes from the top all the way down. They got a ton of people that are just very, very passionate about this game. And I think that's what shines through in their work. TaylorMadeFarm.com to learn more. It's a beautiful website. You can learn about their history and all the services they provide. Shout out to the TaylorMade team. Appreciate you guys. Let's make more memories in 2026. We haven't done one of these in a little while. It's time for a Rail Talk citation. This is the part of the show where we identify very, very exciting horses early in their career that we think are going to go on and do big, bold, explosive things in their future. And this week's Rail Talk citation is a horse named Decode. So this was Oaklawn on Sunday. This was the fourth race. And, shameless plug, I was looking at the card because Counting Stars won the Astral Spa Stakes by 4 lengths later in that card. Very, very exciting filly. $150,000 OBS April by. Shout out to Mark Cassie, man. The Cassie horses have just run left and right for us this year. You think of Ewing, Sandman, Curtain Call, and now Counting Stars. They've been rocking it left and right. So we're very, very excited about her. But I was looking at the times during the day. She ran like 111 flat, which is a solid time on like a cold day. And I looked and I saw a horse that ran 109 and change. And I was like, whoa, who is this? This is Decode. He's a 2-year-old gray son of Spitestown. You don't see too many Spitestown grays, who just ran them off their feet from the outside post. He wasn't a secret. He got bet down to 8-5 from a 9-2 morning line. Not the most stellar field in the world, but won by over 8 lengths. As I said, very fast time. 99 buyer, John. 99 buyer. I believe that's the second highest behind Brant.
It is. It very well is, and the horse, probably could have gone faster if they wanted him to. If Christian Torres, who was riding, wanted him to go that much faster. Joe, this horse Decode was a $775,000 graduate of
the Facing Mid-Atlantic sale.
Facing Mid-Atlantic sale. Yeah. So again, another example of getting a quality horse at the May sale. But it was nobody's secret. Obviously, he had put together a number of tremendous breezes in the morning, and the horse, as a Spitestown, you would expect a horse to have early and quickness, and that's what Decode was on any metric. Whether it's the Equibase numbers or the sheet numbers, or as you mentioned, the buyer numbers. So he checks all the boxes, and it'll be interesting to see if Decode can go to longer races.
Good one. I got to shout out. I like this. I don't know the trainer really. I'm not familiar. No. Ray Ashford Jr. is the trainer. Yep. I assume he's like a local guy. He had 234 starts as a press time for 2025 with 42 winners. So it's not a household name. But he got a $775,000 2-year-old in training purchase. He's got to know somebody. Tom Durant is the owner. So I do like to see that. I like to see some of the smaller barns come up with like potential superstar horses. And this is obviously a horse to keep on your radar. That's why he's a Rail Talk citation. We'll see how far he wants to go. This was 6 furlongs. He's by Spitestown. He's out of a Twirling Candy Mare. I believe this horse was on our short list at Facing Mid-Atlantic, and we just got blown out of the water. As you mentioned, $775,000 where the hammer dropped. But yeah, this was one of the most impressive 2-year-old races of the year, especially this late in the year to have a horse pop like that. I think puts everybody's antenna up, and you got to think that they're looking at like the Smarty Jones or something next for him down at Oaklawn, maybe against Ewing. Maybe against Ewing, and he's going to Oaklawn fairly soon and is doing great. So that's the one to look forward to is Decode. John, one other thing I wanted to talk about. There was a little kerfuffle, which is like the official word of Rail Talk, on Sunday when Aqueduct canceled their card. Now, we got a bunch of snow overnight in New York City. It was about like 4-ish inches or so. And it was pretty cold on Sunday. It was 30, low 30s. The wind chill was probably like somewhere between 20 and 25. And it got some attention because they canceled, and Tom Morley put out a tweet basically saying that, this is, I remember the days when we used to run, through a lot more in New York. And, this is, it's a little soft. And let me read the actual tweet to you. So I'm not just paraphrasing. I'm reading the actual tweet. He says, "I'm a New York racing person through and through, but it appears that we do anything to cut costs and cancel cards." That was the eyebrow raising part right there. It's 34 degrees in New York. We've had 3 inches of snow, and yet we have canceled racing. Absolutely farcical. It used to be that conditions like this were normal. Now, I got to say, in this era of making sure that safety is the number one priority, I don't want horses running on a frozen racetrack. And if you got snow overnight and it's that cold during the day, it makes me nervous to run horses all day over that track. So I got to say I disagree with Tom on this. To me, I would defer to the jockeys as well. They're the ones that are up there risking their lives, racing on the track, in that frigid weather. I don't know whether this was a jockey-led cancellation or if it was a collaboration or, NYRA decided to do it. I would defer to them most of the time. Jon, I don't think this is about them canceling Sunday because of weather. I think that Tom Morley, like a lot of people, is fed the fuck up with all of these cancellations that have happened throughout the year at NYRA. Now, we don't have to run through the list again, but we got the car show thing, the paint fumes, you got the jockey walkout, obviously all sorts of weather cancellations. I don't think that this is an isolated thing for Tom. I think that a lot of people, a lot of owners and a lot of trainers are sick of getting horses ready to run in races. A lot of people, I'm sure, shipped up from Laurel or wherever to run on Sunday at Aqueduct. And it just seems to me like the natives are restless in New York in particular. The owners and trainers are fed up with being overlooked and not getting the chance to run and earn purse money that they're promised when they're supposed to run these cards. So while I disagree with Tom that this was a bad decision to cancel this card, I got to empathize with the way he's feeling, with the way this year has gone at NYRA tracks.
Yeah, I think this is kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back type thing, because it was the same weather pattern where they canceled at Turfway also, and they had a big 5 stake race night at Turfway, carded for Saturday, and a lot of people shipped horses in, jockeys were flying in, trainers were flying in for the Saturday, only to have it cancel. And the weather then migrated to us, and we got a lot more snow even than they did. But Joe, I think what it comes down to is, and you mentioned it, safety is now the big, important, paramount thing that everyone's looking at, and it's safety of all athletes, not just the equine athletes, but the jockeys that are out there and other horsemen that are out there as well. Can you make a case that they should have run this past weekend? You could make a case for it, but I think it's the bigger scope is that New York does look to cancel more often than not. Certainly the casino was still open that day, even though they weren't running races that day. So they I think they can use the blanket of safety to say, well, now we're canceling, and everyone should be happy about it. I do know from my days on NYTHA that there is an agreement with the horsemen, especially for the winter time, that for every 2 days that are canceled, they get 1 day back on the calendar, and that did come to fruition earlier on in the fall, where they had a second cancellation, and they did add a date back in December. So they are honoring that agreement, but it's not a 1-for-1. It's not okay, we're going to cancel and then we're automatically going to put this date back on the calendar that is normally a dark day. So it's. I don't know what the answer is, Joe. Again, when they don't run, no horses get injured, no jockeys get injured. But if they don't run, nobody has a chance in the industry to make any money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. And that's that kind of, you mentioned Turfway, and this is something that also people were kind of buzzing about on Twitter, that why does Turfway insist on running so many nighttime cards?
Yeah.
Like that is something that I never understood. Like you're in Northern Kentucky, it's freezing as it is, you're a wintertime meet. Why do y'all insist on running on the coldest part of the day? And the thing is, like, horsemen don't like nighttime cards.
No.
Like that throws off everything, throws off their entire schedule in the morning. You talk about some of the barn help that's got to be there sometimes from like 6 a.m. to your racing at like 10 p.m. Like it's inhumane. And I'm always so perplexed, Jon, at why Turfway insists on running at night. Like it's not like, you're going up against Saratoga in the summer and like you're trying to avoid going head to head with like the big daytime racing. Like other than Gulfstream, like what is the big attraction in winter racing that you're afraid of butting heads against? Like, Jon, why don't they run during the day? Like you got to cancel so many cards because they're running in the coldest part of the day. I don't understand.
Yeah, and you look at when the Meadowlands used to do it at night, and that's gone by the wayside. And Garden State, which RIP Garden State, that's not around anymore for nighttime racing. Penn National, I think, has year-round racing at night, and Mountaineer has nighttime racing year round for the most part. But again, you're not competing against those cards. You're not competing against, you're getting full fields at Turfway. And if you're getting full fields at night at Turfway, you're damn sure going to get full fields during the day at Turfway. That's their economic model. I'm sure they have the studies and the analytics that show that if they're a bigger draw, from other racing venues if they race at night, because knuckleheads like me are sitting in their basement at home at 11 o'clock at night going, oh, you know what, I can claim a horse in the 10th race at Turfway, or you could bet on a horse in the 9th race at Turfway, and there's no other competition in that sense. So I'm sure that they have the analytics and it works there. But yeah, it doesn't make sense from a safety standpoint. It certainly doesn't make sense from a weather standpoint. Nobody's going out there in shoes and flip-flops to watch racing at Turfway at nighttime in December or January.
Well, the other thing is business otherwise is going terrific at Turfway. That product has never been stronger. Full fields, big purses. You see a lot more barns shipping there in the winter. If they could just get rid of this one unforced error, I think that they could really actually eat into the revenue share that Gulfstream and maybe Fairgrounds have in the winter. But yeah, just on the NYRA thing, I just feel like management at NYRA has got to do better to keep the people that keep the lights on happy, whether it's the jockeys, whether it's the trainers, whether it's the owners. We've just seen too many issues this year that have ruffled feathers from the people that are essential to running the races. So that's just one thing. The general piece of advice is to try to keep the horsemen happier, because obviously I love New York racing. I think overall NYRA does a good job, but this year has been rough when it comes to your core customer and your horseman base being pissed off at a lot of decisions and a lot of issues that have cropped up. All right.
Hey Joe, is episode 117 being sponsored by NYRA? Because if it is, it's going to be the only episode that's sponsored by NYRA.
I mean, I lost the track. Right? We were High's the shill first, and then now people are going to call us NYRA shills. Yeah, we're really rolling at it here at Rail Talk with all the people paying us to have these opinions. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's fucking. I'm a millionaire off a podcast, don't you know? Don't you know, guys? Forget about the 4 sponsors we have.
Right.
That's nothing. When the real money is saying what Heisa pays us to say. Don't you? You guys are slacking if you can't catch up to the game. Come on.
It's the fold-in money that we're making from our silent, silent sponsors.
That's exactly why we had a long discussion about the Heisa budget, because we're trying to protect our piece of it, or it's all misdirection. And that shit cracks me up, because it's just dude, no podcaster except for Joe Rogan and a handful of others is making bank like that. Yeah. There's a lot of other things we could do with our time than run a podcast if we were looking to make money. And they just people just certain people and I feel like it's a racing specific thing where it's they can't fathom someone having a different opinion than them. And it's just if you have the other opinion from me, someone's got to be paying you to say that.
Exactly.
That's the funniest shit.
Oh, how do you think we paid for Ewing and Sandman?
Get us out loud. Come on. Don't spill it, John. Oh God, the shill hour is almost wrapping up. Don't worry, guys. I got one more thing that I am going to shill for. In seriousness, I'm not getting paid to do it, but I'm going to shill for it. I'm going to stump for it, and that's Super Corredora winning champion 2-year-old filly. And this is the last show of the year, so don't worry, this is the last time you'll have to hear me talk about this until we come back in 2026. But the Eclipse Awards are a little over a month away, and we saw friends of the show, Medallion Racing, on social media today stumping for Sci-Fair, and I'm quoting the tweet here. It says, "Sci-Fair was the fastest 2-year-old filly of Breeders' Cup weekend on every metric. Ragazins, buyers, Thoroughgraph, Equibase. We feel she has earned the right to be champion 2-year-old filly with her performance on championship weekend." And listen, no disrespect. This is what you do. If you want to have a champion and it's at least somewhat undecided, this is what you do. And the team at Medallion and TaylorMade, they do a great job with marketing, for their customers. And they're obviously doing it here for Sci-Fair. So I don't want to make this a personal thing at all, but let's review a little bit. Super Corredora beat 3 Grade 1 winners in the juvenile fillies. One of them was a multiple Grade 1 winner. Cy-Fair beat 2 Grade 3 stakes winners in her Breeders' Cup win. Is this where we're at now, where we're comparing 2-year-old turf sprint numbers to dirt route numbers? Like, do you really think those are apples to apples? And I go back to I can't wrap my head around the idea of giving the 2-year-old filly championship to a horse for running the same distance as a Breeze, ran the same distance as a Breeze. And yes, she did it fast. She did it very impressively, but let's be real. Anybody who had a big time 2-year-old filly in their barn this year was pointing for the race that Super Corredora won. And that's why she beat multiple grade 1 winners in that race. Now, if you want to go back and talk about the resume, because Cy-Fair did have another stakes win. Do any of you know the Algonquin stakes winners from the past several years? Anybody know a horse that even ran in the Algonquin Stakes? I didn't even know. John, I don't care. I know you went and running at Woodbine all the time. You are personally accepted from this challenge to the Real Talk base to tell me about the Algonquin Stakes, the rich history of the Algonquin Stakes, and then like third in the Bolton Landing. Like she's had a nice year, and I'm not disparaging her. Shout out to George Weaver. She's done a great job with her. It's a very exciting filly for next year. But you can't tell me that because she has a fast buyer running a 5-furlong turf race, that's better than beating a bunch of grade 1 winners in the most significant juvenile filly race of the entire year. And by the way, Super Corredora got back on the work tab last Friday, 3 furlongs and 34-1. And we were just trying to send her out there for a leg stretcher. And she was tugging the rider all the way around the track, wanted to do more. So I cannot wait to get her back for her 3-year-old filly campaign. And, it's all in good fun, but I come on, like the juvenile turf sprint is really going to supersede the juvenile fillies in a race where you take on all comers. The juvenile turf sprint is an afterthought for most horses throughout the year. Very nice filly, not disparaging her, super talented. Appreciate the medallion people for getting behind their filly and putting that push on. But I just got to go to bat one more time in 2025 for Super Corredora because she took a shot going off 3 weeks and running in the juvenile fillies, set a fast pace, dug in, held off a grade 1 winner, and she is the deserving Eclipse champion for 2-year-old filly. But we're going to see at the end of January, I'll be down there at the Breakers for the Eclipse Awards. And John, I venture to guess you'll be down there as well.
Well, Joe, I have to tell you that if Super Corredora doesn't win, it would just be zany.
This is John sucking up to Rapoli so he'll buy Gulfstream.
No, this is John sucking up to the fact that I did the mating on Zany. It's a DJ Stable homebred. That's why.
We had enough Zany for 1 week last week. But yeah, she's obviously super impressive. And maybe if she had started earlier in the year, then maybe she would have a case because she was very impressive in the Demoiselle. But I don't know. I just I don't want to hear about buyers and ragozins and thoroughgraphs in a 5-furlong race and comparing it to a mile and a 16th race. That's the most prestigious race for 2-year-old fillies.
Super Corredora's Breeze was almost as fast as the
exactly. At 34-1, if we had let her keep going, imagine the thoroughgraphs for that 5-furlong Breeze. But yeah, like I said, we'll see in the new year. I still think we're going to win, but I think it's it's not going to be unanimous. So we'll keep sparring about it until January 22nd or whenever the Eclipse Awards are. All right, so that's going to do it for episode 117 of Rail Talk. It has been a phenomenal year for the show. We've grown past 27,000 subscribers on YouTube, tens of thousands more on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible. So a reminder, if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that button. It helps us in immeasurable ways to keep this show going. As I mentioned, shout out to the sponsors, Facing Tipton, Epic Insurance, TaylorMade, the Green Group, Arian Pedigrees, Toba for all their support this year. We could not do this show without you guys. We couldn't do it without the listeners and the viewers as well. We love y'all. We appreciate all the support. And one of the best things about doing this is being at the track or being at the sales and someone stops you and says, hey, love the podcast. So if you do see us, we will take compliments at any point, anytime. Doesn't matter what we're doing. I could be, delivering a baby. Interrupt me and say, "Hey, love the podcast," and we always appreciate that. So shout out to you guys. Hope you have a tremendous holiday season and New Year. looking forward to seeing y'all in 2026 and many more great shows, great interviews, great great viewer and listener feedback. We truly love you guys. So thank you to my co-pilot Jon Green for all his help this year. Put on a lot of great shows for you guys. Couldn't happen obviously without him. Thank you to our producer Patty Wolf and our associate producers Julia Agresta and Nathan Wilkinson for putting in all the hard work that makes this show look and sound so good. We love doing this for you guys, and we'll see you soon in a couple weeks in 2026. Love you. If I didn't mention it, we love you. See you soon.